Glad you made it back.
Well, guys, I'm sorry I'm late. I had business in Asheville today. Most of you folks in the room got you leaving today, and I'm glad you did. And I'm still having to work, Ronnie, for a living, so work.
You can't even spell work.
So I had a meeting that went a little bit long. I called Jack and told him I'd be.
We got a couple of
Anyway.
We got a couple of county items we need to take care of. You want to do that first?
Yeah.
You want to do that then?
We'll call our meeting to order, County Commissioners meeting to order, and welcome everybody. We do have a couple of pieces of business we need to take care of. Jack, you'll go ahead and do
One
that.
of them is, and the county finance director, Ms. Hall, has the information on it. One of them is that, and you can see from Mr. Bill passing out that the lottery money is always in jeopardy. So when it's there, we try to get it down to the local level as soon as possible. In order to do that, we need an action by the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Education to do that. So Lori, you can tell them what you need to know about pulling that money down and put it in the local coffers instead of leaving the state.
Quickly.
Right. On an annual basis, it's the public, probably messed this acronym up, public school buildings, capital fund. Is that right? Yes, thank you. There's a website, so once a year about this time I go to the website, print the report, which shows what our current balance is. And so you have to make application to the Public Buildings School Capital Fund, and then the money will be sent to the county. And of course, that can only be used for school construction or the debt related to school construction. So over the years, the county has appropriated the funds to help pay the debt on school construction. So tonight, before you, I think I've handed one out to everybody from our board. The current balance is $304,646.15. So that will be drawn down from the state, and will be deposited into the county's debt service fund to help make our debt payments. So from our board, we just need a motion and a second to approve the application.
So moved.
A motion second by Commissioner Tate to application to draw down the public school capital fund. Any discussion? Can't imagine that'd be very controversial. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lori.
If we want to understand, the school board is going to approve the application on Monday night. Is that correct?
Hold our regular meeting.
At their regular meeting.
Jim, you need to call your board to order, or are you going to make this meeting? This is
just information. We're not going to call it. We haven't publicized it as a formal meeting. I don't think, have we, Renee? So that's why we can't. Yeah, we can't have not business. So.
Okay.
Chairman, one other issue that needs to be brought to the board's attention, probably needs some official action to formally approve it. The Highland School QZAB project, the $1.5 million project that we're working on right now, we're scheduled to have bids in on Monday. The board will be reconvening on Tuesday. Hopefully things will be in order so the board may consider awarding contract based on closing the loan, and we plan on closing the loan on Friday. What we found out day before yesterday is that with the sequestration and the end of the year, there was a change in the federal government that affected the subsidy QZAB funds, which basically said that they're not going to subsidize the QZAB money anymore. So the policy was the fund, the county would pay the debt service and the interest on that, and then reimburse by the interest from the federal government. Well, I'm unaware of that until the day before yesterday. We found out that since that was done away with, the only other choice we had was to pay the interest on it. The interest won't be that much. So thanks to the efforts of our finance director and our county attorney and everybody else who's worked on it, we were able to talk to DB&T and convince them that they need to go ahead and fund this project for $1.5 million through tax credits, which will be at zero interest. And so the net effect is no effect. And so actually the county will be a little bit ahead because we don't have to pay the money up and then get reimbursed. This is, Jim knows it, he's a banker. And so this actually is a little bit better. But in order for us to to be official on that, we need to have the Board of Commissioners concur with us changing that from a QZAB subsidy reimbursement to a bank tax credit type of arrangement. And I'm sure Ms. Hall and the attorney can fill you in on any details that you might have on that, but in a nutshell, that's basically what we're doing.
I'm going to pass to each of the members of the board a copy of the revised proposal from BB&T, which outlines basically what Jack has just provided to us. All right. And in particular, gentlemen, we need for you to look at this proposal. So if you have any questions, and if it's satisfactory to you, accept it and authorize Lori Hall to sign the last page and authorize me to email it to all the various players in this transaction tonight so as to lock in this 4.25% rate, which effectively would be a zero with the tax credits.
So it's still technically a QZAB.
It is a QZAB.
They had two different types of QZABs. They had a tax credit-based QZAB and a interest subsidy-based. And we have been working all along on the assumption that we were doing the interest-based because, candidly, most financial institutions that we were dealing with really didn't need tax credits right now.
And they weren't doing the tax credits, so right.
And as it turns out, though, BB&T was willing to work with us on those tax credits, and the net effect is still essentially a 0% interest rate. Now, as you'll note in here, there is a provision in there that basically says if the federal government does away with those grants, then you've got to back up and do it, you know, on interest for a nonprofit-based financing. But that's the same way even with the reimbursement, so it's really not a change.
Okay. And Lori, this doesn't change the payback period of the terms.
No, it's still going to be
Still the
a
same as
10-year
we've
payback.
been talking about.
Yes, that's correct.
How much will that interest total up to amount to over 10 years?
It should be zero.
I know it is, but what would that amount to if something put all pieces and they didn't?
Well, we would refinance it at a tax exempt rate, which would be much better than 4 1/4.
But you're going to have to look at the rate that existed on that day.
On that day, though. So that's, you know, we could get 5 years into this, and the federal government could say we're no longer going to do tax credits tax credits to the banks. So the bank would offer us a refinancing at the current tax exempt rate at that time.
But that could always happen. It's QZAB money.
Yes.
That could happen any.
It can
or
happen.
any time.
In fact,
The current
it's
ones,
already
it's already happened,
It's already
yeah.
happened. Sequestration. They've already
Sequestration.
withheld part of the subsidy.
They withheld 8.7% of our subsidy payments in current year. And who knows what they'll do next year.
Of this grant money being taken away in every way,
That seems to be a trend.
This is the third QZAB project the county's been involved in. The first one was East Franklin, the same holds true with that. The other one was Nantahala, that $1.8 million renovation was QZAB. And then this one in Highlands is QZAB, and they all fall in the same category. And the Iowa Elementary School was a QSCAB, which is very similar, but it did have the supplemental payments in it. So I guess the good news is that the net effect of changing from a reimbursement to a bank tax credit has no effect on the county at this point in time. It's still 0% interest, which is what we talked about originally. And
The bond council advised that the subsidies are subject to sequestration, and as of right now, the tax credits are not subject to sequestration. So,
The money that's being paid is tax credits that's being given.
exactly.
Right.
the advantage of doing it this way with BB&T, and we're very grateful to them for this, is that we don't have to file for reimbursement We just don't have to pay the interest. We don't have to pay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the underwriting of the finance of the qualified Zone Academy bond as listed on the BB&T documents as presented, and give the county attorney, county finance person, and the county manager authorization to proceed to closing.
We have a second. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I believe that the way that this has been explained, it's going to be no different than what we were, and we all were in favor.
That's correct.
Moving forward.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Is that it, Mr. Mayor?
I think Mr. Bill has required.
We need a short closed session at the end of the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Noted.
For information purposes only, there'll be no reports coming out of closed session.
Is that attorney-client privilege?
It is.
Okay. Since I'm not aware of what it is, Chester will go into attorney-client
The
privilege.
treatment will have closed session.
All right, primary reason for us being here, Dr. Duncan and board, is to meet with you guys. We met, don't recall the date, I believe it was back in February. Was it February we were here? February 26th. And for the purpose of discussing the school budget, since I've been involved in this from both sides, we've pretty well done this for years, and it's a good process, good communication. So, Mr. Breedlove, I'll turn it over to you and make whatever statement you need to or want to, and then turn it over to
Well, I don't really have anything to say, Mr. Chairman, other than we're going to turn it over to the people who know what they're talking about. They work very hard on the figures, and hopefully it's bringing some information that we can answer any questions. So, Dr. Duncan, you and Dr. Baldwin, we're going to turn it over to you gentlemen.
Okay, and you have packets in front of you. Let me start with a sheet of paper called Capital Outlay Request. We talked about this, the board has been over this from time to time. There's always been consideration for the county school board in terms of capital outlay requests. We've been very generous in some years, and some years not so generous, but I think that it's based on what you all feel that we need and what we feel like that we need. But this is a capital outlay request that we're putting in front of you as separate from the draft budget that we talk about with our ADM funds. And this is what we would like to ask you all to consider in terms of capital outlay. We've generally placed that in pretty much, I would think, in a priority order there. We put the district-wide security measures. The last time we met, we had some examples there. We had Mr. Bell here, and they'd done a study, and he and Mr. Holland and Holly Bowles had been to every school. They came back with some recommendations, and of course one of them was a gigantic cost factor in terms of cameras, but that's something we need to move toward. We didn't put that particular thing there, although we wouldn't rule it out on that top part. So we put $40,000 of request to you in district-wide security measures. That's to get our front door areas tightened up, the security primarily at the elementary schools, that this would be involved. But you know, we really have not decided exactly what we want to do on school security. There are any number of bills floating out in the legislature about some possible funding for that. Typically, you know, whenever you get a grant opportunity from the state, they want you to put up a certain amount of money, and then they'll put up whatever little bit they're going to put up. But nothing has passed the legislative or general assembly at this point. There's some in Congress, but right now we're just saying that this will be a great start in helping keep our schools safe, get the design there in the front of the areas to try to help that, working with Mr. Bell to do that. Those other items there are just items that are, you know, kind of been waiting in the wings. If you walk up the front entrance to Franklin High School, you'll notice that that carpet is just, whatever's left of it is just stringing out there. Some needs there. The old gym roof at Highlands, although it can rain a lot, did not rain in right now. We are looking at that. It's like I told somebody, you can wear a t-shirt 15 years probably, but year 15 it'll probably get a little thin. Still covers what needs to, but that's kind of the way the Highlands gym roof is. David has looked at it. Right now it's not pouring rain, but this is the portion, I say the old gym days, if you're familiar with it, none of the QZAP money was put in to do that. It's not even part of that project, so it's a separate standalone. HVAC over at the middle grade, or the 6th grade wing, which you all would be familiar with that. I don't know anything other than 7th and 8th grade students. But when the 6th grade was there, they moved them out over to Mountain View. One of the wings at the middle school there, that heating and air conditioning unit is subject to go pretty much any time.
Is it gone or is it
It's not gone.
just ready to go?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's a need, but when it goes, it goes. But Ms. Beal, we'll know more as we get a little warmer weather in the next couple of months and things like that to do that. The MMS restored the boys' dressing room. Some of you may remember a number of years ago that dressing room was turned into sort of a semi-weight room. And it's causing some issues there because we can't have the normal physical education classes that we need to there. And I think we just need to do something about that to get that weight equipment out of there. Not used a great deal anyway, but it does need to be used for a locker room there. I invite you to go over and let Mr. Maslin show you what we're talking about if you need to do that. Student desk and chairs, there are always issues with that. Nantahala is a pretty big priority in terms of the stage to the shop. That's probably something we can do in-house, but obviously it takes some money to do that. Right now, what happens if kids are in the gymnasium area there, Chris, if you want to speak to that just a minute.
In order to get from the shop area to the main building, students have to go outside to re-enter the building. That means that door has to remain unlocked throughout the school day. That is a safety issue. If they put a door to the stage from the shop, they can actually stay within the main building to change classes and that sort of thing. We can keep that back door locked at all times.
It's a safety issue, and it's something that's been needed for a while. If you go out there and look at what's happening with their carpet area in the media center, you can see that. Some floor scrubber things. Replace a dry red car and move one to current fleet. Dry red car is 4 or 5 years old. It's used every day. Obviously, you see Alton going around with the students in it on a regular basis, and our fleet there certainly is. I think the leased car there has 150-something thousand miles on it, 167.
Dr. let me go back to Dr. Ball just a minute.
Yeah.
Just so anything else at Nantahala as a safety, I could have. I thought when Mr. Bell was here that there was 2 of those places like that. Is that the only one? Or am I thinking somewhere else?
I think one of the issues, if I remember correctly, was the Head Start buildings, those mobile units that went into the building. They have to keep that door down there unlocked. Do they still use that, Ms. Blackman?
You mean to go to art class?
Right, yeah.
Well, I mean, they have to go outside to go to their art class because it's in a mobile. But I do know that Mr. Braun now has requested that the teachers keep the door locked, and they're supposed to keep their keys on at all times. They were leaving the door actually propped open at the end of the hall there because there was children going outside to the art and back.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I think we're pretty much committed to the safety factor. That's what we're asking.
We just appropriated some money last month to take care of some immediate issues in the camera situation there.
Okay.
We're making progress with that. Some lawnmowers just going to bad and can't seem to can't keep them fixed, and obviously we got a lot to mow, and they mow them on their own there. I prefer to try to get out a mowing contract, but that's an expansion kind of thing in the budget that we really don't need at this time. That could be helped, something you can look into later on, but I don't think this year is the right way to do it. And then, if you've been on the second floor at the central office, I'm not familiar with the history behind how that was done or when it was done or anything like that, but it's not what it needs to be at all. I mean, it could be, we're not talking about something that, if you go up there, you will see that issue there, and any of the board members can speak to that because they've been in that building longer than I have. So, Jim, any of y'all want to speak to that?
I'm sorry. Well, it's probably not been changed since, since it was built.
Since that addition, that was in the mid-90s. That's been close to 20 years ago.
There's quite a bit of traffic. I mean, you know, and I know we don't have to look as good as anybody in the state, but you kind of, people do come in and out of there to meet with the superintendent one. It's not looking too good. You only clean right so much.
Right. So, you know, we want you to consider that. We'll have to, you know, answer any other questions about it. But, you know, obviously, capital outlay projects are always needed. We need to, you know, keep that in mind. Sometimes you have an emergency issue that you have to deal with. We try to deal with that. Generally speaking, I mean, I feel like that things are in pretty good shape. I mean, we've got several new buildings. I mean, you wouldn't expect me to say anything other than that when you spent $40 million in the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't mean to imply anything other than these are cleanup kinds of things where money has not been applied in the last several years. The windows at Franklin High School begin to worry us almost every year. They're getting to the point where they're kind of coming out of the frame area. Chris, you want to speak to that just briefly, and because you're there every day.
We're having some issues with the windows. Once they're open, they'll just fall. And we've had some kids get injured when that has happened. We've got some windows that we've actually had to close permanently, which is not good. We still have fire exits in the buildings, though, in all those rooms, but still, the windows are just in bad shape.
Any other questions of commissioners on capital outlay?
But those windows, Chris, is that are they in the old section?
The main
building?
Yeah, and I think that those windows were put in around 85 or 86. That renovation.
They've just about, I don't know what kind they are, but sometimes you can buy new, you know, what it is, the spring is just wore out. I mean, there's all aluminum windows.
Yeah.
So you can buy new, I mean, you can, of course, what kind they are. But you can rework.
I'm not sure if he's looked into that or not, but I know he's aware of the issue.
Yeah. I think that's based upon, you know, getting them and replacing them. It's not, there's as many or more than there are at Highlands, and they're working on that project right now out there, but it's not that, you know, I don't think we envision that major of an issue to go in there and to do every window at the high school needs to be done. We're talking $150,000 to $200,000. But this is to take the worst ones, especially those that are having to nail shut or keep shut, so it will come out a little bit better in that respect. The frame areas are what are getting loose around the area. The mortar's coming out of that area and this type of thing, and so it's just a deterioration issue of over what, 10, 20, you know, nearly 30 years of deterioration there on that front section there, and it receives the brunt of everything that comes from the west. Any other questions?
Just a comment or two, and you're right about the fact that you have those new buildings, you have less upkeep on those, and that's something that we talked about starting that long-range plan back 20 years ago. And I think all of us understand industry standard for keeping up, whether it's an industrial building, a commercial building, whatever, the industry standards, you set aside about 2% per year if you're going to keep that up. And Ron, you made the point that not instead of having to spend all of it at one time, you spend a little bit along. Well, that industry standard is 2%, so if you take the value of your buildings, which is, my guess would be about $45 million, is that close, $50 million? Is that ballpark?
Yep.
2% of that's, 2% of that's $1 million a year. So obviously you're well under that. As far as these line items, I'm glad you showed us this because we know what it is. But as far as I'm concerned, what we have to decide is what we're going to be able to allocate in the budget, and it's up to the school board to spend it. You guys are elected by the same people who elect us, so you have to make those decisions. I don't want to get involved in approving line items. We'll approve the bottom line. But I'm glad you showed us this. But it's point is it's
Well, we know that whatever amount is there, if that's the full amount, or if y'all see fit to increase it by a substantial amount, we'll organize. We'll organize it in the format that Mr. Horton and Ms. Hall want that from us, and we've done that in the past.
We would like to see it broken down, whatever the categories are, whether 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
And because you got some flexibility in a couple of those, and one of those categories, you'd have to come back to the board before if we get enough money to approve all this.
Right.
Yeah, if you do that, it'd be helpful.
I think we talked about that, Jack, for Lori's benefit also. You know, we understand what we're doing when we submit it. Based on the amount we get, we'll put her benefit on the category, so we'll have specific items listed in there for you, so we know in that way. It's there, we have to come back to you and ask for forgiveness, and we will shift it here and there. So that's how we're proposing to approach this.
But any other questions, board members? Paul, Jimmy, Ron, anybody? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, one question I
Yeah.
got, I didn't want to jump ahead in that. I see that most of the major expenses here is upkeep and the buildings, and I have no problem with that. I want to keep our schools up. I would like to take just a little bit of a look on this security measures and breakdown. Have you got a copy of that, the breakdown?
That was pretty much based on what Mr. Bell had presented at the last meeting with those little devices that you have a TV camera, sort of one outside and one inside, and people can be buzzed in. It's just right there at the front door. I know it was...
Most of this is entrance security.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
It was that, primarily that device that he had here that they were demonstrating, and it showed that device there. If that's what it is, it's entranceway devices, primarily for all. I think you'd be involving, you would not be involved in Franklin High School. Just can't do it. It's too big, just too spread out. You wouldn't have to. Some of them are pretty, with Cartuga J especially, East Franklin, South Macon, out of Hala, and just improving. I mean, Iola is in pretty good shape there. They still don't have the way that they can actually see somebody other than just look out there through the window. But Mr. Taylor, that really was all based on what Mr. Bell had presented back in February. And we didn't want to miss an opportunity to ask you all to help us with school security.
I appreciate the breakdown. You know, again, that's something that once Jack goes through and gets the final budget, depending on what that is, you guys will have to redo that or not, depending on what he does. And that's just, from my standpoint, I think that's your call to do that.
All right. You guys ready?
We're ready.
Do you have any other questions? I'm watching you're studying all part. I was going to say before we move on, we're glad to answer any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions, guys? This time to ask them.
No, I'm for securing our schools up there and every way. I'm going to be honest with you, fun. I'm not these SRO officers that are interested in. I just wanted to look down and see what we're doing on each one of them. It's the only reason I asked the question.
I understand.
Mr. David, if you need to contact, you know, David Curtis or ask him to go with you someplace to show you any of these kind of things, we'd be happy to do that, you know, anytime.
Very much.
Or any commissioner's welcome to do that. Okay, well, that was part of what we need to do, and this is kind of a big one, it involves real money. So, we'll take you on a little bit of a trip and just go through this information and make this presentation. I'm not going to try to answer a lot of questions right now about it. I can probably do that. Angie has been on it day and night. We all have. We've all worked on it. We knew what was coming, so we had to do this.
Dr. Duncan, one question.
Yes.
The 297,
Yes.
what was the capital outlay allocation last year? Remind me, was it 250?
256.
256, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. And this figures the current expense?
Yes. Last year, the county allocated $6,911,000 for local expense. The school board appropriated an additional $813,000 from other revenue sources. We get revenue sources from timber sales. We get tax refund money, sales tax refund money. We get what's called indirect costs that we get assigned on a percentage basis depending upon the amount of federal dollars that we have. We have some, we file because we deal with kids whose parents receive Medicaid and that type thing, and we get some reimbursement from that. There are several revenue sources, most of them federally based, timber sales, forestry land, timber that's cut, and we get a percentage of that. When you add all those kind of things together.
Dr. Duncan, that includes your fines and forfeitures too?
Yes, sir. Includes fine and forfeitures, includes the ABC liquor store money. It's $47 one year, and
Yeah.
$700 the next year. Where the whiskey money goes, but it's not going to us. So-
The joke that was going to education to start with, that's another story for another day.
Actually, Jack, for the commissioners, on the very last page of what we have, I think they've broken it down on the very back page for our revenue sources. It gives you, like, what Ms. Dr. Duncan was talking about, as you well know. So it's there, black and white.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that the 813 included that.
It did. It included, the 813 included some driver ed that we get, miscellaneous local receipts, landfill tipping fees, sales tax refund. We get a wide area network engineer that comes as a result of a grant from several counties. And then as our schools get rented out in various activities, we have some money for that. And the big thing last year was to operate the schools. I think you all had asked that the fund balance be depleted, and we did that. That's where we started.
Did we do that?
Do what?
Did we ask them to do that?
Well, I think
What was that? I missed the question.
Depleting the fund balance, was that done at the direction of the commission?
Well,
Yeah, we
that
made
was their call to do that, but our suggestion was that if you've got a fund balance and you can't balance your budget, then perhaps you should use it. No, we didn't suggest that.
Well, I think to answer your question, Mr. Tate.
Yes.
I think it's 3 years ago we sat with who was on the commission then, and we talked about the cliff. The fiscal cliff was coming due to reversions, discretionary reversions, other things coming. We talked about that it was coming, and it's here. We ran out of federal funds that we were using before, so we knew to continue to operate at the level we were, it was going to require pulling our fund balance down, and we've done so. At this point, we're talking about, and that's what we had talked about at that point, because we knew this day was coming. We had to join a meeting, and I think we tried to sound the warning, and I think we did that. And this day is coming, and we're here.
I remember the meeting, I just sort of directing, do that. So it seems like it was maybe y'all's suggestion. Not in their head yet.
Well, I think
It doesn't matter.
Probably more accurately was
Right.
we.
I can answer your question, yeah, exactly, maybe the wording is different, but the intent was there.
Yeah.
Just a word on that one, if I might, before you pass on by it. I think everybody expected some fund balance to be appropriated, which you do in a normal course each year. Nobody ever expected it to be all of it, did they, Angie?
I didn't.
I just showed up.
Just got off the truck.
It didn't fall, but I just got off. Okay. All of it was appropriate, I can tell you that.
Well, it started out, I think it was like $3.8 million. And then we took, like 3 point, no, I'm talking about 2 years ago.
I think it's about 2.8, Mr.
No,
Bill.
it was about 3.
About at 3, it wasn't 3.8.
3.246 exactly.
Okay.
What it is. That could be wrong. We didn't talk to her. But her Evans others, they go back to Evans days. So I think we made what the board decided then is we went to work with partners, which we have, on the fund balance, because that is Macon County taxpayer dollars.
Exactly.
That's exactly what the fund balance is. And that's conversations happening all over the state, by the way, about
Oh, yeah.
school boards and their fund balances and whether they need one, but, and I think you do. I think you got to operate the schools too. But in this situation where everybody's at, that's another way we have to work together. Whatever we got to do, we got to do.
We'll move on a little bit. You have a copy of the entire line item budget by school. You can see where every dime has been appropriated or there. Obviously, it's a pretty good sized document, and obviously we can answer questions about it, about every one of them. And the school budget is a, as you may guess, is a pretty complex operation because you receive state dollars, but then you begin to look at the state dollars to see where you can spend and never give back a state dollar. Just don't do that. So we look for ways, for example, people that are high-paid teachers and those type of things are always put on the state budget. But we've had unusual circumstances in putting people in local positions right now. We have 54 teachers on local current expense salaries. But you have that is this document here that's got the blue coloring by school, basically by school, by department. Pretty much any way you want to look at it individually, it's there. I don't think we've actually ever done that before for you.
I've never seen this. It's good. It's a good document. And one thing I think that it shows is what we've all known through the years of our local dollars, a high percent, and I'm glad they do, don't misinterpret this at all, but a high percentage of that goes to smaller schools, i.e. Nantahala, Hines, per dollar, because the smaller the school, the more expensive it is to operate.
Right.
Everybody see that? I mean, can you see that number? You
Well, it's
see
hard to get all this. This is a good document, I'm sure. It's hard. It's kind of like information overload
Sure.
for us. It's
Right.
just spread out. If you try to get to page 3, if you got page 1, I mean, it's good for comparison, but I don't think we're really comparing one school.
Oh, no.
Well, no.
And that's what we're trying to do, Paul, is we're trying to break it down into some broad categories. I think, especially you, for the first time you've seen this, you can't be expected to walk out of here and say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that
Ain't
is.
nobody knows what that's
I've been here 11 years and I do.
Oh, yeah. And what we're hoping is what Dr. Duncan has done, I think, is he's broken it down. The PowerPoint will help give you general, broader categories of figures there will help clarify and crystallize a little bit, so you have a little bit better understanding as you start trying to tackle that monster.
You made a statement a few weeks ago, we saw this physical cliff cutting.
Yes.
We completed the fund balance. And I am a new guy, I don't know why this question might be insulting or, whatever, but has there been a concerted effort to cut spending so that we don't fall off the edge at some point if we saw it coming 3 years ago?
I'll let Dr. Duncan, yes, we've been cutting back as we go through it.
But not enough to.
But if you all remember what we talked about last time, what I talked about was the reversion has continued. Who would have known? So what happens is when you talk about continuing to operate at a deficit where the reversion is taking in essence well over $1 million from us every year, and when we lost the federal funding we had in the past, the monies we have only goes so far to maintain the level of operations that we had going on.
And Paul, that was a discussion we had with when I first came on the board. That was when I first came on. That was the meeting we had, and that would have been 3 budgets ago.
3 budgets ago.
Now, and we had that conversation. I believe it was in this.
Here the Jason.
And we were told the discretionary money was for 1 year only.
And
1 year only.
And we
until it come around to the next year.
We suggested strongly, and I remember the term, we were talking about if you come to a cliff, there's a couple ways to get from the top to the bottom. One's to just plunge off, and the other's to take steps down. And so we suggested taking the steps down, and I think you guys have done it. As a matter of fact, you cut, I guess, $500,000 out of this current year's budget.
Yeah, now that, you know, I know that it's a lot of information. We didn't further complicate it by putting all this, the codes for all these things in here. But so if you look through that, and it's broken down as commissioners have seen it before. I mean, if somebody says to you, well, you know, where is all that 6.9 or that $8 million going? This is where it's going. I mean, we can all agree or disagree on certain amounts of things going. 90% of it goes to pay the people that work out there. Some small percentage goes to other kinds of things. But, I mean, I want it wide open. I want it, you know, as transparent, or whatever the word you want to call it, as it can be. Okay, but that's this long document. I'm certainly not going to do that type of thing here. But let me go on now. You have a copy of that, but you also have a copy of this PowerPoint that I'm going to give to you. You can sort of follow along with it, or you can just watch on the screen here. So,
Mr. Duncan, did we assume in the breakdown that our power bill is going to go up to the 7%? Is this assumed in these numbers?
9.5%.
9.5%.
Is that what you put into it?
Yes.
So this going up?
When we get down to showing you what we think we're going to need to operate the school system, and just to be able, that would, on the far right-hand side over here,
yes, sir,
would be our requested budget, and that would include these increases that we're going to talk about here.
yes, sir.
And some of them necessary, all of them needed. Direct school expenses, we broke that down into $3.866 million are going to, because we have to pay local expense money with benefits, retirement, coaching, teaching supplies, equipment, staff development, custodial sports officials, co-curricular money for non-revenue sports. All of that is a direct school experience. You put all that together, you come up with $3.866 million, and that's what we budgeted this particular year. Now, utilities, again, all our power bills, water, sewer, phone, garbage, fuel oil, natural gas, pest control, that's a chunk. Just our power bills alone, they'll run $750,000. Water and sewer rates, phone connections, the garbage stuff, fuel oil, big expense. This year we only spent about $75,000, but 2 years ago, or a year ago, they topped off every tank with the money they had. So that means that at some point those things will get down where you'll need the $215 or so or $50,000 to put the fuel back in there. We had, for us, a pretty good winter. We've had 2 pretty good winters in terms of not being shut down. We missed, I think, maybe we missed 2 days of school this year. We're able to make both of those up without extending the year. So, but that's where that's the utilities out of all the schools. That's how much it is. Insurance, obviously you have that too. Property, vehicle, liability, workers' comp, unemployment payments, $206,000 for that. The IT, information technology, this is all the salaries and benefits and licensing and software, copiers, internet communications, finance and human resources software that we have to use. That's $1,083,761. Let me say again, we tremendously appreciate the money that you all gave us last year, over and above all of the expenses that we have. That project is moving along. I don't have a definite dollar figure right now, nor have you heard anything lately on that. I I haven't.
I know they're progressing it, they're about to, I think, do a pretty large order. So.
Yeah, I think we're, maybe halfway through that changeover. We're changing a lot of the computers out and getting up, and you've probably seen in some of the projects, we're doing some iPads in classrooms and putting textbooks on that so that we don't have to spend $75 and $80 and $85 for one textbook. We can spend about $14 or $15 for a textbook, put it on an iPad, the kids have it. We have, Chris, I think you've got a couple of classes at the high school that are going that way. I know Nantahala has a project and Highlands has a project there too. It's called a one-to-one project where every kid has their own iPad and computer there to learn on. But this does not include any of that money. Kevin doesn't, I mean, that's over and above total. We have to account for 20% of the total transportation budget for local funds. This is all our bike fleet, the activity buses, salaries and benefits, fuel oil, tires, and driver incentives that we have. North Carolina has a state-funded transportation program. Generally speaking, if the only thing you operated at all was school buses, we would be able to pretty much make that. But anytime the mechanic works on a maintenance vehicle, that charge back can't be to the state. It has to be, anytime the activity bus rolls, that's a white fleet bus, any maintenance on those activity buses, fuel in the activity buses to go up and down the road, we don't get any reimbursement for that. That's an expense for us. And the reason we don't use the regular school buses is because you can't get reimbursed for that unless it's a regular route. So that's where we are. We have a little driver incentives, not a whole lot of money, but to try to encourage drivers to be prompt, to attend. They get a little bonus if they meet all their attendance days and everything there. Maintenance, this is all our salaries, benefits, required permits, fees, uniforms, materials, supplies, and equipment. That takes us $773,000 to operate that program. Central office and school board, this includes all our salaries, supplements to directors, benefits, substitute teachers, employee payouts, custodial contracts, charter school expenditures. We're required by law to send money to the charter schools that have students that live in Macon County, but they go to a charter school somewhere. This year, it's about $66,000 we're having to pay out. So the state, they take it from us to start with, then they bill us at the local level. So we're having to pay that. Our required audits, legal fees, dues and memberships, Medicaid billing, scholars program. We have a third party that does our billing. That's an expense for us, but we do have a revenue on the revenue side for that. And the board and superintendent expense and travel. All of that together. Now all those salaries include human resource, it includes the finance department, it includes any operation that goes on the site there out of the school board office building. Now, we're proposing for 13-14 an additional 2% for salary. Some of this is coming from the bumps on the salary schedule. We have people, for example, who have 15 years experience. They go to 16 years experience, they may get a little bit more money. In North Carolina, you don't get any more money for the first 4 years. It's ridiculous, but you don't. It's a weird salary schedule. You get stuck for 4 years there, and then you get a little bit of a bump. So we'll have some people that will go on up into the next level.
Now, the state employees has proposed a 1% increase, if that's going to pass for all state employees. That would include the teachers. So
you'd have to match that.
We'd have to match that plus the 2%.
Well, our process here, when we talked before, we had a 3% salary increase in there before the governor ever said he might be at 1%. We came back to a 2%. That would include, see, last year, one of the issues was that you got a 1.2% raise after the budget was passed. And we had to come up with the money.
About $450,000 worth.
Yeah, we didn't come back asking for it, but
I think what Mr. Bill's asking though, the reason that's 2% is to account for that yearly bump for those teachers that are on local salary. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
That's including that.
That's including that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
or is it, it's technically not a percentage raise for anybody. Those are, it amounts to that. I mean, if the governor gives 1%, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I'm all over this reversion mess. I mean, it's ridiculous. You take our money back, then you give us a 1% salary increase, and guess what? We get to match that.
Angie, do you know about how much, can you got a better handle about how much our reversionary we have to send back this time, the total?
Right now, the total is $1,096,500.
1.1.
So if you look at last year's budget and what you proposed this year's budget, put our reversionary money back in, we're within $200,000 if my math is correct, of where we should be.
With that, we would have.
Right, we would have been right on the money.
If you didn't have to do the reversion, but
You
you
didn't
did.
have to, but we got to.
But you did.
Exactly.
Right. We also put in on that far right-hand column over there on this long sheet, we added 9.5 for utilities increase. Don't know what that'll be. Obviously, you know, Duke haven't received whatever. You all may have information about that, but that's kind of what we've been looking at. 6% is absolutely solid. We feel that benefit increase is going to be there for the state insurance plan. And we've already been told that we'll have to add a 0.5% contribution for retirement increases. Now, I put this in as something called minimum foundations issue. In 2012-13, the county provided 6,911. Should have had another zero at the end, but anytime you add zeros there, you just it just runs it on up. Macon County Schools put an additional $813,000 from other revenue sources. Those were the fine and forfeitures, the timber sales, those things we mentioned before that are on your back sheet. Another amount was put in from previous fund balance, $1,137,000.22. That was put in, dropped right into the budget last year. So we had a total current operating local last year of $8,861,033. Now, here's where it gets a little sticky. In 2013-14, this coming up year, our jobs money is ended. That was money that was, I guess, given to the school system several years ago, there's about $223,000 of that, I believe, Angie, that was put in basically salaries. And we still have those people, but we don't have the money. The fuel oil, $215,000 issue there. Like I say, we only spent $75 this year because they've been topped off. But in years past, going back and looking at previous years, that was about the expenditure there. It's like an every other year expenditure. Substitutes, we budgeted $150,000 this year. We've already spent $160,000 in substitutes. You say, well, the people don't come to work. Well, they do. But generally speaking, you know, as our cadre of teachers get younger, they decide, for whatever reason they want, that they want to have a family, which is great. That takes them out of our classrooms. And at the minimum time that most of them will take away from the classroom will be 12 weeks. Some of them take longer than that. They may have leave. But if they request what's called family medical leave, by a doctor's note, then they can get 12 weeks. Well, during that 12 weeks time, we've got to pay a substitute to be in there. and the substitute rate's $100 a day. So you can see pretty quickly, and we've had at least 28 this year. Mr. Moore, am I close on that?
Pretty close, yes.
Of 28 individuals who have been out on family medical leave, paternity leave, that type thing. But we've got to go on. So we have to have a substitute in that classroom, and that substitute has to be paid. And some years it's been a lot less than that. I don't know it's been many more than that, but that's a pretty substantial amount. So mathematics, when you take 28 people that have been out 12 weeks, that's a long time. It takes a lot of money to cover that. We don't get any, I don't think we get any state money to cover much of that. So we had the 861 to operate with no fund balance. We walked in this year, July the 1st, had 0 fund balance. Every bit of it was appropriated. We had an additional cost of about $140,000 from a required 1.5% salary increase, and required increases in retirement and insurance contributions, and an additional $145,000 for class size adjustments, because we had more kids show up at the elementary level than we could accommodate without having to have another teacher. Utility rate adjustments that were not part of last year's budget, we had to put in. $250,000 we took out of our own budget to balance it in utilities. In essence, when we started July 1st, we were $550,000 in the hole. I mean, we were, I know the commissioner would say, well, when are you going to come to us and ask for that $500,000? Well, our plan was not to have to do that. And we may be able to, and I'm hoping we can keep good on that issue. Since the year began, this is what we've done. Somebody asked about that. We've cut all incoming staff to interim positions. Of course, a teacher has 15, 20 years experience, they retired, or 35 years experience, they retired in December. We brought the lowest paid possible teacher that we could bring into that classroom. We've sacrificed a lot, because you'd like to go out and advertise that and have experienced teachers come in and fill those positions. We could not do that this year. We didn't have the money to do it. But that was a minimum salary, no benefits. We reduced our cost of school software for computers by $67,000. We took off the top of that. That was there, but nobody was using it. We cut off purchase orders from the local funds in February. The teachers out there in the schools and the principals are hollering and screaming about not having money. And I just say no, we're not doing it. Hired no replacements for any teacher assistant that went out. They left. We didn't rehire them. We hired no substitutes for any custodian, office personnel. If you got down 2 custodians, you might have to empty it yourself. We just had to, we're not going to do that. Reduce the superintendent office expenses by about $37,000. We cut staff development to the bone, initiated energy saving measures. We believe at the end of the year, Mr. Beal, we'll be at even or a little ahead. And we have cut her to the bone.
Good job. And let me say, Dr. Duncan, that's quite an achievement. We understand what he just said. They cut $500,000 in the current year they're in by doing these things. So that's
right.
Extremely commendable.
Now, here's the if. If we have the same 6, 9, 11 for this year, and I apologize for not knocking that over 0 in there. I can add them anytime. But, and commas, I can put zeros and commas together. So, if you said, okay, we'll give you what we gave you last year, we've got local revenue cuts. See, last year we had about $800-something thousand. But you heard that magic word, sequestration. All our Title I money's been cut. All our special education money's been cut. we don't know the exact amount. But what happens, it's a double edge for us. You cut our federal funds, you cut the indirect cost, because we don't have the dollar out there to go after, because indirect cost is a percentage. And once we do that, that's the problem. And so, I mean, I don't know, we're not projecting quite as much, probably in timber sales. That has been up pretty high, but it's dropping down some. We're not projecting as much. Generally, fines and forfeitures are pretty constant, seems like. I mean, it's only, you know, I've not been here that long, but Angie says that's pretty constant. You know, maybe they'll arrest a few more one year than another. People pay their fines and stuff like that. But we're having a cut in local. Most of that's federal dollars. That E-rate, which has been a great thing for us, $165, $170, sometimes $200,000. As you get better with your communication devices, you don't need as much. If you don't need as much, then you can't apply for as much E-rate reduction. So you try to get better and you get penalized on that side. But, you know, I'd rather be better, that's for sure. But some of the things we've done at the new schools, especially with the internet communications and this type of thing, now that we have it, we can't apply and say we don't have it. So we've had to cut that. We're projecting with no cuts, a 2% raise, and that was that 2% I talked about over there with the bump in salary and maybe the 1% from the governor. 6.5 insurance, retirement, 0.5%, 9.5 in utilities, increased fuel costs, loss of all our fund balance, our substitute salary, reduced board revenue due to federal cuts. We need 9567455 to open up next year.
And that's comparison to a total of 8,250.
No, 8.8 this past year.
I'm sorry, 8. Sorry, I looked at the wrong spot. 8.8. So what you're saying is really you're
$1.9 million.
But keeping,
That increase, Kevin, is due to all the things we're talking about. It's basically the projected increases in fuel cost and salary.
keep in mind we were 500 figures short anyway to start with.
Now, that second bullet there, Kevin, is, I mean, what we based this on was the 6,911 that was here last year, plus the little reduced amount in the board revenue based upon the federal cuts that we know are coming. So we're saying to you that we're projecting that you would give us as a minimum $7,597,000. Our need, based upon what we expect to spend next year, with no cuts now, no cuts, is 1,969,773. $1,000,009. We'd be just as happy as we could be if you all would write that check. And the board has reviewed several documents of some proposed cuts, but see, even if we cut nearly $900,000 that we've kind of got out there, and now the board has not taken any action. We've had 2 or 3 things floating around, and things get out there, but I mean, I knew this stuff was coming, so I just said, look, we've got to make some adjustments, and honestly, it'll be up to the board to decide if they need to do that. They may not need to do anything. You give us one, you know, $1,009,000, everybody be happy. Probably.
And for me, as an incoming superintendent, the big concern for me is that a lot of the cuts that we're talking about that we'll make this year, we simply won't be able to make next year because
they're already made.
They're not available to us.
Right.
So what you're saying is not adding any new positions, adding no new programs, just staying where you are, and to cover the increased costs that you mentioned, you need an extra 1.8, 1.9.
Yeah.
To stay, hold harmless. Is that?
Right, that's, you know, that's making no budget cuts. You know, that's not increasing the teaching staff, that's not decreasing any position at all.
And you had mentioned about absorbing some positions. I know you talked about absorbing several, not including that. This is not considered to do that.
No.
Right.
And let me mention too, that the commission has for a number of years appropriated an amount for a 2% supplement, which amounts to about $808 per employee. And that supplement has been passed on an annual basis. That's completely out of this issue. I mean, we're not, we didn't say, okay, because all that does is just inflate the numbers even more, because it's a wash. I mean, you'd given us $420,000. We'd end up spending about $460 because the supplement, by some decisions along the way, were passed out to other individuals other than specifically teachers. But we never, Angie can tell you, I don't think we ever billed the county for the full amount that was supplemented. We only asked you for what you had appropriated and told us. If you said $406,000, that's all we asked from you. But more than that was paid out.
How much is the director's supplement? Is there a number on that?
Directors is about, well, do you want me to include principals and assistant principals?
Everybody besides teachers who gets a supplement.
What we bill the county for is the teachers and the assistants.
That's
The additional amount
$406,000.
that we end up having to put that we're not reimbursed is about $50,000.
And that used to come out of fund balance. So you just have to, so you, not $50,000 there.
Now, that supplement, Angie, you can tell them what those supplements go to. I mean, I know, but you can.
And the teachers and the teacher assistants get the supplement, and that's what we're reimbursed from the county for. And in addition to that, the superintendent, all directors, principals, and assistant principals. And that's what we're not reimbursed.
Is that me?
Yeah.
You didn't give me one. Bypass me. So, no problem. But that's, Ms. Teagle, does that answer your question,
Yes,
guys?
yeah.
Yeah, so we had an excess of what you know, so it wasn't that we were taking the county money and distributing it to people that the county had not appropriated that money for. But, you know, that was taken out of our regular local budget, that's for sure. It's not it's not a pretty picture. It's realistic. We've done a lot of stuff this year that I wouldn't want Chris to have to go through. Trying to, gentlemen, and you all see this exactly. I mean, the difference is in that $1 million fund balance that was dropped into the budget last year. And then we have these excess costs that came in, which, I mean, I don't think any of the commissioners, when you approved last year's school budget, knew that the governor, the outgoing governor, was going to give a 1.2% raise. I don't think you knew that. I mean, I don't think you did. You know,
The legislature actually done it 10 minutes to 3 in the morning.
Right. Yeah, and you know, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they meet and the ink gets dry on the signature, they send us a reversion. We've got 20 days.
Give it to me, take it away.
Send them a check. Well, we're in a mess. We got to send them over $1 million check back to the state. We've got people on board who within 6 weeks are going to stand in front of kids and teach them. So we can't send all those people home at that point. So we just had to eat that, and that's where a lot of the, but we're, you know, can cuts be made? Yes, and I'm willing to, stand up and make them. And but I also know that we get to the point where I mean, right now, if we do, we don't fund at least 11 teaching positions. Now, those are interims. Those are people that are retired. Those are not people that are, you know, that are 30-year employees and are going to lose their job. But by the same token, we would be taking money. We've been paying the referees and all for all the ball games. Well, you don't have ball, I'll tell you that. Somebody's got to pay for that. We've been giving this money to the schools for non-revenue sports. I mean, you know, you can draw a pretty big crowd for some of these things, but you don't draw a big crowd for a golf match. Don't draw a big crowd for a tennis match. Nothing wrong with it, but those kids deserve to have. I know you're not buying sets of golf clubs. I know that. We're buying a T-shirt and there's something like that maybe, and the travel to the meets back and forth and stuff like that. So, but the board has been furnishing that. You know, we have a number of other things that the school board has been doing, and that are just, you know, we need to charge people for driver education. I mean, they go online and we give them the books free, and they get on there, and all of a sudden they quit. I mean, there might be 150 kids that start driver education. They decide they don't want to do it anymore. Well, I say charge them up front, whatever it is, $25, $40. And maybe that'll keep them there. But if they drop out, what happens is we lose that spot. We have to buy a certain number of spots on the computer. Once we bought those spots, they're purchased. You come in, you take driver ed for a week, decide you don't want to do it anymore, we've lost our money. And we can't put another person in that spot because it was unique for you. So, I mean, that's not a tremendous amount of money. I mean, we're paying rent on swimming facilities. There's going to be $8,000 this year. $4,500 we're paying rent for kids to do swimming programs. We've got some areas that are, you know, and then when you get through with all those little things, then you start looking at people. And that's just the fact of life is that I know you've seen the governor's proposals that he cut teacher assistants. And one thing we've been, and I really applaud Angie for, because it's every day we're moving somebody. We're saying, look, they're over here in local. Let's get them on state. Let's let the state pay for that. And we can do that. We can do it legally. We can do it daily. Prefer not to, but we can do that. And we have a high-priced teacher that's been out there, and we hire a young teacher in as a substitute. Put that low teacher right there in the local. Put the high teacher over on the state side. So we're doing that on a regular basis. The teacher assistants right now, we have 2 teacher assistants that are paid for out of local funds. The rest of them, there are 43 of them in the system. But all the rest of them, other than 2, are paid for in state funds for support personnel. You know, our teacher assistant salary schedule doesn't vary. You come in, you're making one day. On day 1, you make what you make on day 30 years. You know, so if somebody comes in and works 30 years for us as a teacher aide, they don't make any more money than the first year.
Unless the state gives a raise.
Yeah, unless the state gives a raise.
Angie, how many locally paid teachers do we have?
Locally paid teachers, 54.
54?
Plus the assistants.
And how many
Why does the county pay for those, Angie?
I'm sorry?
Why does the county pay for those?
They are not in the classroom, the K-3 classroom, so if we get audited and it shows that we're paying them the state teacher assistant money, get rid of it.
Where are those 52? Is that positions or is that?
Oh, the 54 teachers?
Yeah.
They're on there because we don't have enough in the state allotment to pick it up, and then when we done the reversion, we had the discretionary reversion last year, we had to trade in 18 teacher positions to meet that reversion of $1 million. So we didn't send those people home, we had to find another way to pay them. We can only pick up so many out of Title I federal money.
So then the rest of them have to go on local, and that's where we put our less experience, which is the lower paid ones.
All that was the comment I was making a minute ago about the smaller schools, and I'm all for them, but I think we've understood for years, when you have schools like Nantahala, see, the state allocates teachers based on number of students. 22 students for kindergarten, or 24 for high school, whatever. But, and the problem is, if you have a school system like they've got in Clay County, for example, they're all in one big campus. They're all on one campus. I bet they don't have 10 local paid teachers over there because of that. And these systems like Wake or Mecklenburg, where they have larger schools, it's easy to, those kids basically come in lots of 22 and 24. Here, with our smaller schools, they don't come in lots of 22 and 24. So you have two choices. You don't teach them, you don't provide a teacher for them, or you have a locally paid teacher. And my guess is we're paying, it's probably $2.5 million in locally paid teachers. Is that close?
The base salary, along with any benefits, is about 1.5.
But if you had benefits, you had all that, $2 million.
About 20-something%.
So all counties do that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So the old adage, if we pay for the bricks and mortar, the state pays for the teachers, that's.
It's not true.
That's not true.
It's not true. And if
It's true in some counties. It is true in some counties. The state of Mecklenburg, Wake, Durham, Pitt, Orange, most of those, all those big populated counties, because they, like him, they have the money to manipulate. They can swap money. They got so much more money.
And they have, and we talk about, when we built these schools, we talk large schools. A school of 450 kids is not a large school. These large schools in these metropolitan areas, it's to some degree economics, because you get those kids in those lots of 22 and 24, the state pays for all of them. And the smaller the school, the more expensive it is. So if you go back, roll the clock back 50 years, we got a school on every hilltop. Now we're going to be paying $10 million a year, not $2 million. It would cost us that much to have a teacher for every grade level at all those schools. So it's where we are. We're sort of in the middle somewhere. We're probably not.
And it cost us about $4,000 more per student at Nantahala than it does at Franklin High School. So
That's my point exactly. And I say that because I'm a supporter of Nantahala School being there and these other schools, but you know, had we not done some of the building we've done in the past few years, the situation would have been worse, right or wrong.
Yes.
Much worse.
Much worse.
I got a question on the few pages.
Yeah.
On the $223,000 that were paid for jobs that the money has ended for. Right there it is. Is that right there for teachers' age, or what positions is that we pay for? Is that the?
We actually pay school bookkeepers. It had to be a school-based person, and it could be anybody as long as it was a school-based person, but we chose to do school bookkeepers. Because that was the amount that was left over. And now our school bookkeepers will be on local, because there's not enough.
That's an acronym for what?
Actually, Franny, that was federal monies that we had. JOB has a program that was funded by federal funds.
Okay, about how many individuals would that figure out there be for?
When you're talking about teacher assistants, and that's what it is.
No,
teachers.
it's 223.
Well,
How many jobs would that be?
Well, I think with bookkeepers with their
That would
salaries.
be about
and their-
7, roughly.
7 jobs.
I think we got the picture, and we can ask, we got some information. I'd like to hear from Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from our board members, just you guys' thoughts on it. Where are you as far as, if we come back and say, no, we're giving the exact same thing we gave you last year, then in your mind, are the cuts there, are you able to make that? I mean, just where are you? I'd like to hear from you guys. You're the ones about to make a decision.
I'll answer first, and then let the other ones. When you come back to us and say that, Mr. Court, we're sending people to the house. That's what it boils down to. You can cut sports, you can cut other areas only so far, and any businessman here knows that the biggest expense you have is personnel. And when we get to this stage, we make it meet, and we will. We'll make it work. We understand that. That's how we operate. But when you say that, ask me a question the answer is we will be sending we will be taking jobs, and so we'll be losing teacher positions, and some people have to go to the house. That's where it's at.
I think with the, what we're requesting from y'all at this time, we do have a worksheet of $900,000 that we can go back in and work with. That would include 11 teacher positions absorbed.
And that was about 550, about
470. And it goes everything down from local staff development, student service at Franklin High School, county office position. We may have shared these with you the last 3 days. But it comes out to right at 900,000. And if that's kind of a split for need 1.8, and that's kind of a split there. We can go back in and work with that. And if it gets beyond that right there, I think it's really an emergency situation for us in education.
Here's what I really don't understand, and if you read the governor's budget, regardless of how you feel about the governor, but they're counting 1,500 new teacher jobs. As a matter of fact, that don't replace the teachers that's retiring. That's what, that don't replace the teachers who's going to retire out of the system. So what does that mean for us? Well, we're going to have some retire. We do every year, right, Andrew? There's some that going to retire. So we've got some young folks here, some local that are teachers, that are in the system now, interns or however you're going to call them. So, if we built these new schools and built new classrooms, and they ain't got no teachers to put in front of the kids, it's a pretty sad deal.
Other board members look, we've worked a lot on this. We've talked about it. Every meeting we talk about it. But I think everybody realizes that, Mr. Corbin, and I don't like to talk about hindsight at all, because it's gone. That went down, went yesterday. Last hour went by. That's the big truth. I won't have that again, that time. It's gone. But when you look at what would have to happen with some of this type stuff, should there have been step downs? In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
But that was not, those decisions have been made. The dog's gone, whatever. And we're now, and we're trying to get it right so that when we start with new leadership, that, it bothers me, and I would hope at some point that the board would consider a policy of asking the county commissioners to say that we will maintain or be required. Now, we're not required by law to maintain a percentage of fund balance. It's the first state I've ever worked in where you did not have to do that. Our auditors told us this thing was coming last August, and we shared that with the board, and you all know that too. That's where all this came. Because he said you're going to run out of cash if you don't do something. We're not going to run out of cash. I won't let that happen. We're going to, what's an alternative? Well, quit school and send them home. No, you got certain legal ramifications. You got a 215-day contract with teachers. You close school tomorrow, they draw their check, which is your biggest expense. So, things that people say, well, it's easy to do. It's not. Hard to do.
I think you're right, Dr. Duncan. We said this 3 years ago. I remember saying it in my first meeting, that, and I think in retrospect, probably the stimulus money, which all that sounded good at the time, but that was money from the federal government that they didn't have.
Not reoccurring.
And it's not reoccurring. It's basically like spending savings money to balance your budget. And again, I'm not knocking former superintendent or whatever. It's just what happened. And then you couple that with the spending of the fund balance money, and we hear a lot talking about fund balance. We say it's a bad thing that you guys have no fund balance, and we have folks say it's a bad thing that we've got a good fund balance. You know, I think it's a good thing we've got a good fund balance. But anyway, that's another subject for another day. But that was
very
the two.
thankful you do have a good fund balance. That's why I'm asking for it here.
I would like to thank you for admitting it, because everybody else denies it. Everywhere we look, they deny, oh, that's not why we're asking. So I thank you.
Right.
But on the other hand, you know, if I got any board members, I won't cut you guys off.
I was just going to say that I would guess I'd ask the commissioners to take into consideration that we have had 3 superintendents in the last, when Dr. Baldwin takes it, it'll be in 13 months, we've had 3. It makes a difference when you have a leader at the helm and they're taking a look at everything that's happening. There's going to be a more consistency when Dr. Duncan has done a fabulous job, but he came in and had to start taking over, and it's hard. He did not even know what was happening when he first got there. So I truly believe we do need your help. I think desperately at this point, because if we do start taking athletics out of there, and you think, well, that's not our job to give them sports. Giving them sports helps them stay in school. I know with my children, they say that they do better in school when they're in their sports. If we do not have those things, the kids are, some of that is their motivation to stay there. So it is the whole picture to make the academics work. And I just feel like when Dr. Baldwin gets in there, he is going to be consistently looking at where we're going to do this. So we need your help probably more this year than we ever will, because I think we don't know what the state's going to do each year to us with these reversions. But I do believe he's going to start taking a look at that and trying to adjust to that, where we've not had that consistently from the same person. I think that will make a huge difference. And some of the things that we'll lose are just things that are just part of what we do. It's maybe not be the academics, but it's what makes the academics as good as they are. And I know, talk about even what Highlands might lose. I mean, we don't have that many students taking the career classes, but we still need it. We might lose our AP courses. Well, AP is very, very important to some of these kids. Get into certain colleges because of them, and when we don't have them available to them, they're going to be losing some of these colleges. In our elementaries, some years Highlands might have a small class, but we don't get rid of that one teacher for that 1 year because of it, because in the next year it's a moving target in Highlands. So do we start losing our education? So I'd say this year we desperately need you, but I have a lot of faith in Dr. Baldwin that he's going to start, the minute he has already started. It is amazing what him and Dr. Duncan are already doing prior to him getting there, and he's going to make a difference and try to be ready next year for the budget. Is it going to be perfect next year? No, I don't think so, but I do believe.
Here's what you got to remember is what Chris said earlier, that these cuts that you see now, we're back to this table this time next year. Where they're going to come from then, if the state does something, you need to start putting pressure on we're picking up the state's responsibility to educate our children. That's what we're doing here. Plain and simple. You can put it any way you want to.
I still remember what you said last week, Mr. Bill, haunts me at night when I'm thinking about this, because you're right. We should not be here looking at the Board of Commissioners saying, you need to step up and fund for us what our state is not funding.
Exactly.
It's not fair. And to our counties, to our citizens, it's not.
It's not fair to our students, it's not fair to our teachers. But we shouldn't cut none of those things in Highlands. They deserve as 8 or 9 a.m.
Yeah, frankly, anywhere across the board.
I just,
and I
but when you continue to have reversions that average over the last 5 years, in essence, we have lost over $5 million.
But those reversions haven't cut the state's allocation per pupil expenditure.
Oh, yes.
The things I'm looking at, I just don't get those. We know those reversions are coming. They've been doing, what, 4 years now?
This will be the 5th year.
5th year. So
we've
just finished our 5th year.
It changes every year. We don't
I
ever
think
know.
one of the things
Be the 6th year.
I think one of the things that happened, and sometimes we lose sight of this, is back during the time when we had the ARRA money, the federal money, the stimulus money is what I call it that. I think the state used that money to backfill their appropriation to the counties. And so when that money ran out, the state has not picked up what they were paying before. And so when the federal money is gone, which is what the stimulus was, the state has not picked that back up and made that obligation that they had before the stimulus came along. And that's what puts you in a bind. So what they've basically done is shifted their responsibilities back to the county, and you've had to try to make up the expenditures that should normally be covered on state appropriations. Is that fair to say?
Did a better job than most.
Well, from 2005, 2006, the state's contribution per student was $5,787. This year it's $5,822, and it's been leveled all the way across there. According to the Department of Public Instruction, and in 2008 it did get up to $6,100. But the other time it's ranged within $100 per student spending.
But that's the initial allotment they say they're giving us, Mr. Hickey, but that's not how it works out.
That's before the revision.
That's
money
before the
sent back.
reversion.
It just says spending per pupil.
That's what they say they allot us per AD and per pupil at the beginning. But yet, well, we have to turn around, and in essence, it's just like the example I use is, we're going to give you that money, but during the year, suddenly we get a phone call and say, gentlemen, guess what? That money's not coming. And it totals, in essence, the figures you're using this past year, over $1 million that we never received.
Okay, we get so much per student, and it's pretty well been the same. Has anything else stayed the same in the last 4 or 5 years? Salaries, gas? No. Everything has gone up, except
County appropriations is
basically,
going up.
yeah, right. And that's where it's.
During the same time, yeah, from $1,900 to $2,700 this year per student.
And that's not fair, but
Now, I'm not kicking anybody, I'm just asking some questions. I am a new kid on the block, but what is the number?
Well, actually, if I don't think the appropriation really has increased over the past years. From my correct, it's been about 6.7, 6.9 for the past.
Per pupil, county appropriation.
The county appropriation has been the same for the past several years, very similar to that. There has not been an increase on that.
It's been 2006, it's gone from 1,809 to this year 2,430.
If we allot what we're requesting, that's where it would be due to the budget happened. Last year, 6.9, I think year before that was 6.7, so there has not been a steady increase in the county appropriation that's come to the Board of Education.
Where'd you
Do
get that?
your figures also include the capital outlay appropriation and stuff?
This is per pupil, Macon County School spending per pupil.
See, I think they.
Current expense of capital outlay.
That comes from the Department of Education.
But if they include capital outlay, that is true.
No.
Because
Yeah, capital outlay, I think, as a whole, because if it was, ours would be off the chart. Right?
No, because we only got it worth $250,000 for capital outlay, 256.
Yes, 250.
You're talking about, you're probably thinking of the building and the construction.
That's debt service.
That's not the same as capital outlay that we're appropriating.
Yeah, and that's what, per year, what was that amount last year?
$256,000.
To what?
256,000.
Yeah, but with 4,400 students, that's, what? Not much.
But the county spending for the school system has been fairly flat. I don't know where they're, I mean, you can do anything with numbers, manipulate and make it look like anything. I'm not sure what their
Current expense has been flat for
current expenses.
5, 6
Pretty
years
flat since I've been here.
Pretty much.
That didn't increase
2008,
anything.
2009. That's when it pretty much came to a halt, and we didn't have any growth in revenue, so therefore you didn't have any growth.
Which is what we're talking about here is the current expense budget. That's been flat.
As far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding's been flat for at least 4 or 5 years now. I think that's correct. These are 6.7,
It's been pretty flat
6.7.
since 2009.
That's when the growth stopped, so
That's
that's going to
what I was thinking, so.
make sense.
If I was wrong about the 5 year, it's been, I think that's correct.
It seems like.
Yes.
You know, when we met in February,
Now you have the exact date, right?
pardon?
Yeah, you were correct, because you were the one who had the exact date.
Well, I just remember things.
Right.
At the end of the meeting, I complimented Dr. Duncan. He says, we don't need any, we need $80,000. Man, that's the kind of guy I like. Identify a problem, a solution, bingo. What's happened since February? I know you took a lot of heat when you threw the early college in there. That was some bad. That got everybody right. And maybe Union Academy. But what happened in this process?
well, when we looked at the total expenditure that we had going in, I don't think some of the money was included in there. Angie, do you recall when we were talking about that? See, that if you look at the fund balance, Mr. Higgins, there's not a lot of difference. I mean, we're not really proposing to increase the budget. But our problem is that we don't have $100 and something thousand, $1 million to put into the pot this year that we put in last year. And so when you look at the proposed expenditures for 2013-14 and the actual expenditures for 2013, there's not a lot of difference. It might not be more than $100,000.
I think what he's referring to is that first list that we had that had early college on it, had all these teacher assistants on it,
Right.
and we've got no teacher assistant positions.
Because we're here at the store, we've got classes, or a class with 4 students, or classes with 8 students.
Right, and we're cutting that. And then when we went back in and looked at that, yes, that was, if the board had chosen to go with that, and that many cuts, that's exactly where we were. Do you have that first list, correct?
Yeah.
You may have it.
Yeah.
But I think that included Macon Early College, it closed Union Academy. It sent home 36, I believe, teacher assistants.
Paul, we thought that it actually affected education so greatly that we, as a school board, would be remiss not to come and ask you guys at least to help that, because we felt like the education of Macon County, or I felt like, would be drastically changed, and it would not be for the better. I mean, you know, I read this sign up there, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I think about that, how much more money we have to spend at the other end. So I know as a school board member, I just thought our education, we should at least ask you guys for this prior to making our education just unacceptable, basically. I mean, I know for my own child, I would be, for all the cuts that we were going to do, and she's going to be in middle school next year, I would be concerned to let my child. And how can I, as a parent and as a taxpayer and as a school board member, feel so strongly about some of the cuts that we were making that I didn't think it was enough, it would be okay for my child, for all those other kids out there that I'm supposed to be a voice for. So I had to be a voice at least to ask for it.
Yeah, and I'm not into a management thing, I'm just asking, we're just having a casual conversation.
Paul.
But as a board member, do you think that it's been cut? I just heard a word a while ago, mismanagement. I'm not throwing that term out at anybody. It's just over the past few years, maybe things, we saw this cliff coming, and I don't see where there's been any cuts. At what point do we finally realize that, hey, the taxpayers are tapped out? Do you think as a school board member that you're as lean and as mean across the education system of Macon County that you could be?
No, I think there are some things that could be cut. Not everything on there I think should be cut, because it would directly affect education of most of the students in the district. And that's what I meant by Dr. Baldwin coming on board. I feel like no matter, we have to have a leader in our position, in this position as superintendent, that's going to be there. Because as a school board member, I do not go into every one of those schools, and that's not really my job either. So I don't know where all of it. Is there some fluff out there? Absolutely. I run a small company, and there are usually somewhere in there that you can, there's some fluff. And I think putting a leader in there, and again, I will say this every time, Dr. Duncan has come in and done an unbelievable job. He has turned down people, I know because I get the phone calls. He turned down $180 for me. He turned down $45. He has turned down so many things, even putting an ad in a yearbook, just everything. He's done everything he can to cut this. And Angie has, hats off to Angie. She's worked, I mean, I walked by the office the other day on Saturday, a gorgeous Saturday day. She was in there trying her best to figure it out. So I give hats off to them. Yeah. But I truly believe the leadership, and it starts from the top to the bottom, and our leadership coming in is going to make a difference for us. So I feel like, yes, we're asking you guys for a lot of money, but this, and you're about to be thinking, well, if we start this is ongoing and ongoing. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't think it's ongoing. I think there is going to have to be cuts, and like Mr. Bill said, that after we do so many cuts, you can only do so much. And then hopefully us taxpayers are going to get so excited with the state of North Carolina and make noise for them to quit giving us these reversions and quit taking money from the students before they do, anything else. I know everybody's got budget cuts, but it seems like our students get hit with it pretty quickly. So Did I answer your question? And I have no problem with you answering any of these. Don't feel
And
bad.
I'm not kicking you or anybody else.
I don't take it that way. I think it's great you're answering.
And I just look at numbers, and then when I read numbers from the Department of Instruction or accurate numbers.
I know, because you know what? Numbers, I can do my books and change my numbers as I want to a little bit. You know, you run a company, you can
I don't
sometimes
do that.
You can't.
I mean to hire you. I just had a big number.
Numbers can change. Sometimes people make numbers look a little bit like they want to. The state of North Carolina wants to go, and we're still one of the lowest. Our teachers are paid one of the lowest in the whole United States.
I'm not,
You know, so there's many things. I mean,
Let's solve one thing right here. Your spending per student has not increased. Is that true or not? Yes or no? Flat answer.
That is correct.
based on, you mean county spending?
What they've spent. I don't know what where those figures came from and exactly
Where do
what
you get your
they're
numbers? If it hadn't increased, what do you base that on?
Their budget.
Their what?
Their budget. If you increase, that's almost $1,000 a student. Or what?
That's published by the Department of Education.
I don't know what that's based on. I'm asking you guys.
What I'll say to you, Mr. Chair, we have not increased spending per student in the years I've been on the board. We have not. We maintained the budget almost the same level. Your appropriations you've given us have been at the same level. It has not increased. So the spending per student, we have not increased that I'm aware of at all. And I understand the figures, as you're saying, Paul, if you're looking at that, but it's...
I'll tell you, I will look at that same website if you'll share it with me and get some clarification with that,
But Paul, what I'm saying, we're asking the people that actually do it.
Yeah, and that's...
Those are people in Raleigh that I don't know how they're getting them. We're asking the people to do this.
But we need numbers to have a discussion, not emotions, you know, and that's, you know...
I understand, but what I'm asking, we're looking at, they've not increased their spending. To say that they've increased their spending per student that much is not accurate.
Correct.
I'm not saying you're not, I'm saying, I don't know what those figures are or what they're based them on. But the county has not increased funding that much.
Sort of like those 1,500 teachers are supposed to get. We'd like to see them.
yeah, part of the problem, and you can see that in there, is that over the period of time, North Carolina does less and less and less for the students. Back in 2008 and 9, we got $25.9 million from the state. You put in $6.9 million. I mean, we had plenty. And I think we operated like it was plenty, and we did. Now, I mean, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. This past year, we got 24,588 and a reversion of $1 million. The reversion back in 08, 09 was $174,000.
So if those figures are accurate, and that's what I'm asking, then we're spending less per student than we were 5 years ago.
Yeah, 2008 is the key for the state contribution.
Yeah.
Right. In state dollars.
Yes.
In state dollars, we are spending less. Now, I mean, and that's true, isn't it?
Yes, that was the peak year.
Right.
That was the peak 2008, then it fell down, now we're inching back up. But
And the reason that it's inching back up is that we had a reversion of 1.2 million in 11, 12, and we had a reversion last year of 1.064. So our reversion improved by $200,000. This year, it's going back up to 1.1. So
38,000 more than it was last year.
right, more reversion. So it'll tip down again. You know, it's not. We're getting dealt a bad hand, and we just have to do the best we can with it. And you know, we're going to do some things that I'm going to make some suggestions and things like that. But again, you know, the school board has to take those actions. And you know, when you start sending, like I say, our teacher assistants, they're all paid out of state dollars. But we already know that the governor said he's going to cut right now, or anybody else. We have about 18 teacher assistants in kindergarten. because we have about 18 kindergartners countywide. We have about 18 in first grade, so that makes 36. So we've got 43, so we've got 7 that are dispersed out. Now, right now, the principals use those teacher assistants in whatever way can be of assistance to the school. I mean, some may use a little bit of their time in third grade. Some use a little bit of their time in fourth grade. We don't have any teacher assistants above fourth grade. But if the governor cuts in and says, I'm going to take teacher assistants away from you, and that leaves you, if he says that, and we have to do exactly that, then that gives us 36, and we say to 7 individuals, we'll have to make some decisions as to who goes home first. I mean, that will happen. Now, he says he's going to put that money up into teachers. Well, like Mr. Beal said, they cut you, you're, at 1 year, you were down, 3,000 teachers that the state cut. Now they're going to give us back 1,500.
Those were positions primarily, though. Those were not bodies.
They were, that's correct.
They were unfilled positions that have been hanging into the budget all these years. They just eliminated those positions, not teachers.
Right, and that's true. That's true. We look at every position right now. We're trying to staff our schools, the elementary schools. We're trying to keep the class sizes on a 1 to 22 ratio. Yes, we have some small classes, but we are trying to go in, and where there are very, very small classes, I'm sorry, they may have to go home. Sometimes their teachers have been teaching a long time, but the students aren't showing up, and that's an unfortunate thing, but it has to happen. I mean, we could go up to class size of 1 to 28 in high school. But personally, I would not want to do that. I would hate to see us have to do that. We may have to. I mean, there may not be another way out. I mean, if you said to us, we just think that 1.9 million is a little much. Got to do something about it. We'll start on it. So, what I plan to do with the board on Monday night is we're gonna look at this here. Right now we're not in a position to adopt a final budget. We have no idea what the federal thing is going to do. We don't know what you all might do or ask us to do. The governor's budget's out. Senate budget coming out in a couple of weeks, Mr. Beal.
Well, they said yesterday it's probably going to be delayed somewhat.
So it could be early June before we really have any, and I'd prefer to wait as long as we can. I know Mr. Horton has, you have state law that says you got to present a budget, and I'm not about to give you something that's not balanced. I wouldn't, the last money tree got cut down somewhere. We can't deal with that. So, other places in the world, they can deal with it like that, but we can't. We don't print it. So that's kind of our track here, is to say, look, we have a preliminary. We'll give it over to you, give us some guidance and direction on it. Then we have to come back to you early May with what would be our preliminary balanced budget. But that's got to be based on what you all feel like that you can help us with, or that you can put toward that, because as you know, we don't have any taxing authority. Wish we did, but we don't. We cannot levy. All we can do is hope they'll arrest more people and their fine and forfeitures come in. So if they're breaking the law, we want them to do that. So I'd be happy to try to answer more questions, whatever, but that's kind of our direction. I think you all understand that, Mr. Coleman. You understand that we can't just say, okay, here's our budget, take it or leave it. We're just saying, based on the numbers, and Lori and Jack will work through that. If they need to get back with us, we need to have communication. We know we've got to give you a balanced budget, but you've got to give us some direction. Otherwise, we can't do that. We'll do the best we can with state dollars. We don't know what that'll be. We don't. And the feds, it looks like you all may have a program for progress. They've got some areas of their budget, Ron, is being cut 30%.
That's right.
And they're going to have to make some adjustments there. So now most of it's 5%, but they have luxuries we don't. In other words, they don't have to have school 180 days. They can cut the number of days that they serve students, not wanting to, and their employee situation is different from ours in that, you know, our teachers are contracted employees for 215 days. But we're looking at least 5%, and that would be about $75,000 in Title I money. It would be less than that in some others. That's our heaviest federal dollar coming in is the Title I that we use to serve at-risk kids.
I believe we can cry and moan about what the state's going to do. I think at the end of the day, it's up to those of us in this room to make the decisions about the best education for our children in Macon County.
Exactly.
And that's what we got to do. At the end of the day, that's what we got to do.
And it takes adjustments, Stephanie. You adjusted your business in the last 3 or 4 years, I'm sure.
I certainly did.
Yeah, and that's all. I'm just trying to put a cautionary flag up. This can't go on.
Great.
And Paul,
School board?
we suggested that, and I say it, this is the third time I've said it tonight, but I said it 3 years ago. And again, can't go back and unscramble an egg, but probably some steps should have been taken leading up to this, and that's, you know, that's.
Let me answer you this one. Steps are going to be taken moving forward. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
And we're aware of it.
We understand.
And like I said, we'd like to have 1.9. That may not be doable. We've got contingency plans in place that we're talking about over up to 900,000 we've identified already that we feel like if we don't get that, we can start from there. If we have to go more than that, we'll do it, you know?
And a lot depends on, I mean, there's a bigger picture here, and that's the whole county budget. And
correct.
This man and Lori are working on that now, and we don't know what that looks like yet, but, you know, we've asked them to make that very conservative, and we've indicated that, you know, we're not willing to raise taxes in a recession. I think that's still the temperature of the board, and so we're going to have to see, you know, we're going to have some more money from sales tax coming in. That looks like that might be a positive trend. How much is that going to be? I don't know what they're going to project for that. So, you know, there's just a lot of variables right now. It's sort of like that old Diamond Rio recorded that song a few years ago, Meet in the Middle. You start walking your way, I'll start walking mine. Meet in the middle, deep field, Georgia fine. And I don't know where that's going to be.
I know that's a gospel song.
It's not a gospel song. It's a country song. It's a clean country song. I like clean country.
Well, Chairman Corbett, it seems like so many times seems like I'm sitting here asking for money, but I do want to say to the county commissioners, thank you guys so much for what you do as a parent and as a taxpayer, what you do for our students that you have already done. You know, just because I'm always seem like I'm asking for more, I do appreciate what you have done. It's made a difference. And we have some great schools out there, and
We did.
Highlands is getting something that we need desperately, so thank you so much.
I'm glad you did.
I'd like to thank every one of the people that's on that board. I wouldn't trade the position right now for nothing. It's hard work that you're doing, Dr. Duncan. I'm thankful.
We all crazy. We put our hat in the top, didn't we?
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you this much right here too. The state right now is trying to dump everything that they can on the backs of counties, and I believe Mr. Beal, Commissioner Beal, say that too. We've seen it down there. They've threatened us for dumping road maintenance on us, where we got to keep up all the county roads. And I think that in Macon County here, that we've tried hard to keep a balanced budget. Jack worked hard on it, and tried as hard as we could do to keep a budget and do our job here. Yet the state is taking money like the schools is necessary. When I said I wouldn't trade with you, I don't personally want to cut a thing at the school. I could cut the fat out without any other department we got in this county. It wouldn't bother me a bit to education. I've got kids too. It's they're in early college right now, and it's tough. But I don't know the pressure that's put on us and the state, the very same as yours, it's just pushing it down, the area's taking every nickel we've got extra to do something with. I want you all to know that we appreciate all of it.
Well, I'll end it by saying y'all got other business to do. We appreciate everything the board's done. As Ronnie and I have talked about, when I go to our meetings, I think I've said this last time, when I tell other counties, their board about what a relationship we have between the two boards, I get looks of disbelief a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I do. They say, nah, that can't be right. And I say, oh yeah, it is. That's how it works. So we know you'll do everything you can for us. We appreciate it up front. And I promise you, we will go from when we find out what we've got, we will make the adjustments we need and do the best we can. And that's all we can say.
That's all we can do.
All look together.
All mine, don't want to cut off your conversation, but
We got other business we're done.
we said everything we need to say.
Motion adjourned.
Well, we have a
No.
closed session. Closed session. I'm all for it. I ain't been to the house yet.
Let me ask one more question.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to